welcome back to the second segment in our portfolio project where we are building a portfolio in Unity. So in this one we are going to add another button and another panel and look at displaying some different types of content. So we have our games button here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate this button. A lot of times once you get a button set up the way you want, just to give it all kind of uniformity, you can just duplicate it. So right click it and duplicate. You're going to get games button 1. You can just click in there to rename this, and this is going to be, we'll do this for like some artwork. So maybe we have some artwork we want to display. So we'll call this our artwork button. We can go out here into our scene view and just drag that new button off the top of the old one. Try to line it up there a little bit. And then on this new button, we'll just go to the text and we'll change it to say artwork. There we go. And then going back to our button here, there's a few things we'll want to change here. For instance, in this event trigger, this is still hooked up to the game display panel. So right now from the pointer enters, it's going to open up the game display panel. We're going to want a different panel to open up here. So we'll just have a little more changing to do, but we have the basics here. So let's make a new panel now. So we're going to do the same type of process we did for the games. So I have this games display panel. We can turn it back on so we can see it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just, again, copy this. I'm going to duplicate it and then modify it for my artwork. So I'm going to right click, duplicate. We'll give this a new name. We'll call this our artwork display panel. And then I'm going to go back to the games display panel here, and I'm just going to turn that off. So now just the new artwork display panel is visible, and inside of here we have this button. I'm going to go ahead and just delete this button for now, and then we have just the panel, which is fine just the way it is, and except that we want to make sure that it actually is updating to itself. It actually, when I duplicated it, it saw that in the games display panel it was pointing to itself, so actually Unity was smart enough to copy that over as well. So our pointer exit on here should already be set up. It's already set to the artwork display panel to deactivate that when we mouse off of it. So let's just set the button up here first of all to get these different panels popping up and down. So I'm going to go back to my artwork button, which is this guy right here, and let's make it so that when I mouse over the artwork button, I turn on the artwork panel. So right now it's set to turn on the games display panel. Don't want to do that, but this is really easy to fix. All I have to do is grab the panel I do want, the artwork display panel, and just drop that on top. Again, go here and select the game object of that artwork panel, and go down and set active to true. Alright, so let's take and play this, and let's just kind of see what happens. So when it starts, I didn't turn off this panel, so let's just mouse over it and off it so it disappears. So that part's working. When I go over the games, I get my games, and I can mouse over. When I go over artwork, I get my artwork. But when I go from artwork to games, both panels activate. Okay, so right now if I'm just flipping over buttons, every button I flip over is going to display its panel, and it's going to leave it there when I mouse off that button and go to another one. So that's going to be a problem. We don't want these panels to stack up on top of each other. So what we're going to need to do here, see, I'll do it again. Here's my artwork one, and when I go over the games one, you notice the background brightens up because both of them are active here. So what we're going to need to do is not only have these panels turn themselves off when we mouse off of them, but when I go from one button to another, I just want to make sure that all other panels associated with other buttons are turned inactive. So I only have one panel active at a time. And again, that's real simple to do. So for instance, if I go back to my games button, I have my pointer enter event here. When I enter the pointer, I'm going to turn on the games panel. I can just add another thing to do when this event happens, and I can give it the art display panel, and I can tell it to turn that one off. So game object set active, we'll set that to false. So now when I enter the pointer enters the game button, it will turn on the panel that's associated with that, but it's going to turn off any other panels I have. So as we build a list here, maybe we have 5, 6, 7 different buttons here, we'll just keep adding to this event trigger to turn all those off whenever we go to a new button. Okay, we're going to do the same thing to our artwork button. We're going to add another pointer enter event thing to do. We're going to drag in our games display panel to it, and we're going to go to its game object and set active false. Okay, uncheck that to make sure the panel turns off. Okay, so now if I go to the artwork display panel and I deactivate it so that by default it's off at the beginning of our project running, everything will be turned off like this, and I hit play, when I go over artwork, it turns that on. When I mouse off of it, it stays, which is what we want. If I mouse over it and off, it shuts off. But if I switch buttons now, only one of them staying active. You can see over here how my games display panel is inactive, artwork is active. If I go over games, it flips. My games is active, my artwork is inactive. Alright, so that's how we can just get it to only show one menu at a time. And then if we see something we like and we go over and mouse over it and then we're done with it and we come back to a button, it'll shut itself off. Okay, so that is how we can just add more buttons here, make them behave all together and get along. Alright, let's add some artwork now to our artwork panel. So I have my artwork display panel. Let's right click it and let's just create a UI button. And I like using buttons for this. We could use images or something else, but I like buttons here because we can add in some interactivity to them a little easier than with some of the other things. It's already kind of built in. So my button here in my artwork panel, and actually let's turn this artwork display panel on so we can actually see it to work on it. Here's the button. Again, you may have several pieces of artwork that you want to feature in your portfolio. So let's go ahead and size this up, and as a matter of fact, we can probably make it match sort of the size that we did on our game display panel button. So that was about a 335 by 250, so let's go ahead and do the same thing here. 335 by 250, and we can play with these as needed. But that is going to be our button. And again, we want to have an image in our button here that shows a thumbnail of what it is that we're looking at. So maybe you have some sort of a picture that you took with your camera, or you've got a design that you designed out in Illustrator or Photoshop, or whatever kind of art you do. You drew something in pencil or a painting and you take a picture of it and you put it in here and you want people to see it. That's kind of what we're going to do. Okay, so we need in the button itself here, we need to give it an image to display. So we can take any kind of a picture here, any kind of a thumbnail. I'm just going to drop one in. That's another screenshot from a game. I'm just going to drop that into my portfolio folder here, my assets, and then it imports it as a sprite. Okay, so these can be JPEGs, they can be PNGs, they can be TIFF files. Any kind of a photo file here is fine. And so we're going to go back to that picture button. Let's go ahead and drag this into the sprite, and there we have the screenshot picture from a different game that we've made. So this will be whatever your artwork looks like. Okay, so now a small picture is fine, but you may want them to actually be able to see this in a little bit larger area. So I'm going to show you next how we can make that picture kind of zoom in to kind of fit this frame here, so people can get a bigger view of it. If they mouse over it or if they click on it, they can see it larger. So that'll be our next step. So to be able to display this image larger, we're going to need an image that fits on our canvas here that will display it. So I'm going to go to the canvas and I'm going to right click and I'm going to create a UI image. We're going to call this our display image. And we're going to use this image to display any of our artwork or documents that we want to display on a bigger scale here than our thumbnail. So in the display image here, we're going to just grab this and kind of stretch it out so that it fills in the whole panel here. Alright, so we're just going to pop this up on top of our panel. It'll cover whatever is already underneath there, and then we will fill it with the image of the artwork that we want to display. So that's our display image. This is a image component of our canvas, and it has here in its image a source image that takes a sprite. So what we're going to do is when we click on our artwork, we're going to pop up this image, and we're going to make the source image here, the sprite that we want to show, equal to our artwork so that it will show it in a bigger window here. So we have our image set up. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to have to do a little script. So we're going to go to our portfolio main, and we're going to make ourselves another function that we can call with a button click. So we're going to make this public so that we can get to it from our buttons. It's not going to return anything, so public void, and we're going to call this show image. And then we're going to need to know what the image is. So we're going to make a sprite variable here, and this is going to be our image that we want to show. Alright, and all we need to do is when we call this, we're going to send it the sprite that we want to show, and then we're going to have a link to the image panel, that display image panel. So let's go up here to the top and make a variable to hold that. Now, since I want to get a hold of something that's a UI element, I have to go up here and add another using here. And what I need is Unity Engine.UI, which will allow me to access any UI elements. And then we're going to make a variable here to hold a link to that display, the display image that we put in our canvas. So that's going to be an image, and we'll just call it display image, and let's make that public so that we can drag that out in the inspector. So we're going to establish a link to that display image that I just made, and then when we click on one of our thumbnails for our artwork, we will send that sprite to our show image function here, and then we will say display image dot override sprite. So what we want to do is we want to override the sprite that's currently being displayed in the image. So that's what this will do. It'll allow us to override that white background with whatever sprite we want to. So we just say override sprite, and then we have to tell it set it equal to the sprite that we want it to do. So we'll set it equal to image. So basically we're saying go to the display image, override whatever sprite is currently being displayed in it with the image that we just brought in. Okay, so that's the script side. We're also going to want to make this image display visible and invisible. So at the beginning we want this display image to be invisible, but when we do this, we're going to want to make our display image, we can say display image dot game object set active true. So we can toggle our image to visible here when we click on something, and then we'll have a way of it being disabled out in Unity. Okay, so when we click the button that shows our thumbnail of our image, it'll come here, it'll turn the image panel on, the display image on, and then it will override the sprite to the one that we want it to show. And that's all we should need to do in our script here for this. So let's go back into Unity, and then let's see here. Alright, so when the game first starts, we don't want this image to be visible because it'll get in the way of our panels. So again, we'll just go here to our display image and we'll uncheck its box up here in the top corner to make it so that it's inactive. Now on our artwork here, on our picture, what we're going to want to do is add an on-click event to it. So since this is a button, it's already got the on-click event here. So I just have to add an event that will happen when we click it. So I can hit the plus button here. The function that I want it to run is in that script that's on my camera. So I'm going to drag the camera in, and from here then I'm going to get my portfolio main script that I have on the camera, and then I'm going to tell it to show image. And then here it gives me a spot to put the sprite that I want to send to that function. So okay, so I'm just going to come over here to my portfolio folder where I have my image. You're probably going to want to make a folder for the images or the thumbnails so that you can just know right where they are. But I'm just going to drag this and drop it right here in the slot for this sprite. So now when I click this button, it's going to call this function in my portfolio main, show image, and it's going to send it this sprite. When we go in here then, it will save the sprite under image that I sent it. It will turn my image on so it's visible, and it will override what's being shown in that image with the sprite that I just sent it. That's how that works. We'll go back in here to Unity. Let's make this, so let's go ahead now and deactivate our display panel to make sure it's all working good. So at the beginning, remember, we should have all these turned off. Okay, so now we have everything turned back off. Let's go now to our main camera here, because we have to give it that link to the display image here. So we're going to grab the display image right here and drop it into the slot there so that the portfolio main script knows this is the image that it's going to be working with. Now we should be ready to test this out, so let's hit play. We're going to go over our artwork tab to show our artwork. And then if we want to look at this one closer, we can now click it, and it now made our display image visible, and it overrode, so if I click here, it overrode the sprite that was being displayed with the one that is here. So there you go. And then now the next thing we want to do is when we mouse back off of this, like we're done looking at it, then we want this image to go away. So we can do that just by going to our display image here, and we're going to give the image itself an event. So we can do add component, and we want event, and we want event trigger, and we're going to add the trigger we want is a pointer exit. So when we mouse off of that image, go back over towards our buttons, we're just going to make sure that it turns itself back in active. So over here again, we'll make the pointer exit event. We'll hit the plus sign to add an event. The panel I want to turn off is this image. So I want to turn the image off. So I'm going to drag that display image here, and then I can say go to its game object, set active, and then no check mark means false. So now when our pointer exits the image, it'll turn that image back off. So let's check that out, and that should kind of complete the whole process here. So we go to our artwork, we click it, there it is. I'm looking at it. Once I'm done, I mouse off, it goes away, and then I can come back here and look at something else. So that's the basic way that you're going to show any kind of images, a single image anyway, in your portfolio. So this could be artwork, this could be writing, this could be a picture that you drew, a photograph that you took, anything that's just a single image. This is what you can do to actually make that work. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is what if you have a multi-page document. So you want to put a game design document out here for people can kind of click through the pages. You don't want each individual page to be a picture. You want one thumbnail for that thing, and then you can flip through it. So that'll be the next thing that I show you. So let's say it's a multi-page piece of art or a document, whatever. So what we're going to do here is set that up. So let's just do this in a different button. Let's add another button here for maybe a game design. So we're going to follow the same steps that we've done before. We can go to any one of our buttons here and just duplicate it. And then let's go ahead and give this, we'll call this our game designs button. And and then we'll just drag that button off of here and drop it down in so it's roughly the same distance. We'll work on getting all these things looking nice and pretty here in a bit. Let's change the text on that button to say Game Designs. Now remember, when we add a button, we have to update a few things here in its event triggers. So when we have a pointer enter, we want to set active our game design panel, so we have to set that up. So let's make a panel here. We can copy either panel. I'm just going to go ahead and copy this artwork display panel. So I'm going to duplicate that. We'll rename this as Game Designs Panel, and then we'll have to go in here and change a few settings on this as well. So now we have a Games Designs panel. Let's go ahead and turn it on so we can see it. We're going to put a different picture here, but we can just leave that say picture for now. We'll call this like Game Design Document or Multi-Page Document or something like that. But we'll do that in a second. The panel itself is already set up that when we mouse off of it, it'll go away. So now now that we have the panel, we can set up our button here. So our Game Design button, when we mouse over it, we want it to display not the artwork display panel, but our Game Designs panel. So let's just drag that in. Again, we're going to the game object. We're going to set active true. And then when we go to enter this, not only do we turn on our Game Designs panel, but we want to turn off our Games Display panel. We're also going to make sure that we need to turn off our Art Display panel. So now that we have another panel here, we're going to have to add another element to all of these. So I'll also want to turn off the Artwork panel. So we'll do that. Now we're going to have to do this for all of our buttons to add the artwork and also this new panel, this Games Design panel, to those as well. So make sure these are all set. So however many panels you have, you're going to have that many events in your pointer enter. Okay? So actually, let's go back through and check those. So in the Arts Display panel, right now, when we, or the Artwork button, sorry, right now we're turning on that. We're turning off games. We are going to also want to add in this new Games Design panel so that we can turn that one off. And if we go up to our Games button, we're going to add there, and we have to add in the Game Designs one as well. Alright, that's your Games Display panel. So we're going to turn off our Games Design panel here, like so. So you just have to update these. Every time you put a new button in, just update the ones that are there. So now when we hover over this, we should get our new panel, and all the other old ones should be gone away. Alright, so that's our button for our hover over it. On the Games Design panel, that's set up so that when we exit, we're turning the panel back off. So all of our functionality here for our panels should be set. The next thing is just to start working on the button. So I have this button that came in with the other one. We'll just maybe call this multi-page document, and then we'll just bring in a document to show here, and so that's going to mean that on this button that we're going to want a different thumbnail. So let me grab a multi-page document here to drag into our project. So I've dragged in a multi-page document in this folder here. It's got 11 slides in it, and what we're going to do here is we're going to show how to set this up so that we can click through all these pages. So we're going to first of all go to our button here, and we're going to change its source image to this one here. Alright, now that I've dragged in this folder full of pictures, and I've set in my multi-page doc button here, I've set a thumbnail. I'm going to need a way to hold all the pictures that are associated with this. And to set it up so that we can have several of these multi-page documents, we're going to need to add a little script to this button here that will hold all the images. So I'm going to go into Mono Develop, and let's make a new script first. So let's create a C# script, and we're going to call this image holder. This is going to hold images for us for this item. I'm going to go ahead and attach this to my multi-page doc button here. So this now has this image holder script, and the image holder script is not going to do anything other than hold the images. There's going to be really no real code in here. It's mainly just going to be an array that's going to hold our images. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and open that up in Mono Develop. So my image holder, I can get rid of all this. I just want a variable in here. We're going to make it a public, and then we're going to call the sprite, and I want a sprite array, so I use the square brackets, and I'm going to call this images. So there we go. That's all we're going to do, is we're going to just hold some images in here. So we're going to save that. And then out here in Unity, I've already attached that script to my multi-page doc button here. Here it is, and now here's a place to put images. So if I open that, you see it's empty right now. So what we want to do is we want to drag in all the images in the order we want to display them into here. So I'm going to lock my inspector. This is a nice little trick. Up here on your inspector panel, there's a little padlock. If I click that, it'll lock it. So now if I click on other things out here, it doesn't change. Okay, this is a kind of a good way if you want to make changes here and click on the other objects and not have it change. You can do that. I'm going to go into my game design document folder, and I'm going to grab all these pictures that I want it to show. So I'm going to start with the first one, and then I'm just going to shift click the last one on the list, and then I can just drag that whole list of things and drop it right here on images. So go right here on your array's name where you get the little plus sign, you drop it, and it will automatically size the array and drop all these things in the order that they were selected. Okay, so here's my slides in order that I want to show my pictures. Once you're done with that, you just unlock your inspector so that you can start looking at other things. And now on my multi-page doc button in the script, I've got all the images that are associated with it. Right, so that's the first step. And then we're going to have to write a different function that runs when we click it. So we're not just going to show one image here. We actually need to kind of show a slideshow of images. What we're going to do is we're going to go into our portfolio main and make a new function. So let's go to portfolio main, and let's make a new function that's going to run. So this is going to be called public void slideshow. Now, slideshow is going to need to have the images that it's supposed to show. Those images are in the image holder script that's attached to the button. So slideshow is going to take in a variable here. It's going to take in an image holder. It's going to take in an instance of that script, and we'll just call this images. So when we load this up in our button, we're going to have to actually attach into the button the image holder script that's on it. You'll see how that is here in a moment when we do that. So we have our images coming in through our image holder. Okay. Now that we have that in place, what we're going to do is we're going to need to kind of move these images around a bit. So I'm actually going to make a variable up here that I can use to hold these images that came in, because I'm going to need to use another function with this one, and this images that I bring in is only going to be known inside of the slideshow function. So let's make a variable up here at the top that's going to hold my images. So let's make a sprite. This can just be a private one. So we'll just make a sprite array here called images, let's say to display. Alright, so now that we have that, the first thing we're going to do down here in the slideshow is we're going to transfer these images that I just brought in into my images to display. So to do that, I'm going to say images to display. I'm going to set that equal to my images that I brought in from the script. Now that's the actual script that holds the images. So I have to tell it to set that equal to dot images. Okay, so this is kind of confusing, and this should work. I probably shouldn't have named these the same because that's a little bit confusing. Let's change this here so that it's not as confusing. Okay, so back this up a second. Let's just call this image holder up here, because that's really what it is. It's an instance of image holder. And then if we call this image holder dot images, all right, so maybe this makes more sense. So the image holder is a script that's on my button. I'm just going to give it the name image holder. So then images to display, that's going to be my local array here in my portfolio main script. I'm going to set that equal to the image holder, which is the script that holds the images, dot images. And the image holder script, that was the public variable that is my array of images. So basically I'm transferring the images from the script that's on the button into this array that's inside my portfolio main. So hopefully that's not too confusing there. But we have to do that. Then the next thing we want to do is go ahead and set our display image. We're going to go ahead and use our display image that we set up to do one image. We're just going to use that. So display image dot game object dot set active true. So we'll turn that back on so we can see it, just like we did before. And then what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to know which image from our array that we're showing it. So we're going to need another variable here that's going to help us keep track of that. So we're going to make a variable here that's an integer, and we'll call this current image index. Okay, this is going to keep track of where in the array we are of our images. So then down here we'll say current image index equals 0, because we want to start at the beginning of our list. And then we're going to say display image override sprite. We're just going to go ahead and set that equal to our images to display. Okay, this guy right here. And then the one we want is the one that's at current image index. All right, so basically we're saying, okay, go to the display image, override the sprite that's there, give it the one that's in my images to display sprite array, and the one I want is the one that's at this index. I just set that to 0, so it's going to show me the first one in the list. And then we're going to need another variable here for us to know that we actually are using a slideshow. Okay, so we are going to make a variable up here. It's going to be a Boolean. And this one here is it can be private as well. This is all just happening in the background. So we're just going to say slideshow, and we're going to default this to false. This will let us kind of be able to know if this is a slideshow we're currently displaying or not, so that we can get some different behaviors based on if we're trying to click through pictures or not. Okay? So that's going to get us showing our first picture. Now what we need to do is put in another function here that is going to allow us to go to the next picture. So I know this is a little more convoluted than just showing one image, but we're kind of setting up the groundwork here. So we're going to make this other function here now. So we're going to do a public void next picture. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to do a quick check. If this is indeed a slideshow that we are doing, because we set, we got to add that line up here. So I missed a line here. Slideshow equals true. All right, so if we call slideshow and we're going to have slides, then we're going to set that to true. So now we can ask here, if it is a slideshow, then what we want to do is advance to the next picture. So this is actually going to be something that's going to be added to a click event in our scene here. It'll all come together here in a minute, and I'll walk you back through it. But if it is a slideshow that we're doing, then we got to check, do we have any more images to show? So let's just check current image index. If we say +1 less than our images to display dot length. So this is just checking, let's see. Should be a less than. Okay, so basically what I'm saying here is if I'm currently doing a slideshow, if my current index image, that's my position in the array, if I add 1 to that, and it's a less than the length of my array, how many images I have, then I have another one to show. If I add 1 to my current image index and it's not less than this, then I'm at the very last picture. That's just a way for us not to go off the end of our array. Alright, so we have that. So if that's true, then we have more to display. So then what we're going to do is we're going to take our current image index, and we're going to add 1 to it, so that it's pointing to the next picture in the array. And then we will go to our display image, we'll override the sprite there, we'll set it equal to our images to display at the new current image index. Okay, so that'll just cause it to show the next picture in the list. And when we get to the last picture, if we click on it, it's just not going to do anything because it'll fail this test here. So this allows us to click through all the pictures in our array. Okay, so that's kind of the scripting side. Let's go back out here into Unity and let's set up the button clicking side here. So we're on our multi-document here, our multi-page document. We've got the images stored here. On a click event for this one, we want it to call portfolio main, but we don't want show image. This time we want slideshow because this is going to be a multi-image. I have to give it the image holder script. That's this right here. So I can just grab my script right here by the image holder and drop it in right here. Okay, so I'm telling it, when you click it, send it this image holder here that's attached to my button that has the images for this button. Alright, once I do that, it's going to go out here into the script. It's going to run slideshow, which is going to set all this up. It's going to show the first slide in the list and set slideshow to true. Okay, then on my display image, which will now be active on top of everything showing that first slide, I need to add an event here to see if we have another one to go to. So I'm going to add a new event, and this time I want a pointer click. So if I click on this picture, I want it to go to my camera. I want it to go to my portfolio main script, and I want it to go to next picture. So basically now, once I've got a picture up here, if I click it, I want it to call next picture. If next picture is called, it's going to check to say, hey, are we currently showing a slideshow, which we set to true here? If so, then we're going to check to see if we have more pictures to show. We're going to change the index number and then show that next image. So let's test this out and see if it works. So we're gonna, let's see, let's turn the game designs panel off here. Let's hit play. I'm going to go over game designs. Here's my multi-page document. I'm going to click it, and it popped up the first picture here. Now if I click it again, it should go to the next one. There it is, page 2, page 3, page 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's the last page. I keep clicking and nothing happens. Alright, so let's just kind of recap what we did here because it was kind of complicated as we wrap up our video here today. So we have it set up so when we're on our game designs panel, we have this multi-page document that'll pop up. When we click on it, we have set up a click event that goes to the slideshow. And if we go to slideshow, we are sending it the image holder that's holding the images we want to display. We are copying those over into a local public sprite array. And then we are setting the display image active and setting it to the first position in the array. And then we are overriding the sprite with the first one in our array here. And then we're telling it slideshow is true. because then on our image panel we're kind of making this work for two different things. If we click on the image panel now, we want it to show us the next picture if there is one. So that's what this is. Next picture runs when the display panel is clicked. If we have a slideshow, so if it's a multi-page document here, then this will be true, and it will then figure out if there's another one in the array that we need to show, and then it will show it. Okay, if this was just a single image, because we're using the display image for that as well, then it will not do any of this. So if you click it, it'll just ignore it. So that is basically how that works. When we hit the last image, it will just not do anything. It'll just keep showing that last image, and then when we mouse off of the panel, it will disappear. Okay, so kind of a longer, more complicated video here doing the multi-page things. Hope it made sense and that you find it helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and we will do another video here soon to wrap up our portfolio, where we'll look at adding other types of work to it that aren't images or games. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.